Good morning. You're watching City News 24/7. I'm Faiza Amin. Canadian sovereignty will be top of mind for Mark Carney today as he returns to Canada following a trip overseas to meet with European leaders. Our Parliament Hill correspondent Glenn McGregor has been watching all of this unfold, joining us now. Glenn, so what sticks out for you when you kind of look at the new PM's first global meetings?
Yeah, the fact that he's stopping in Iqaluit and also Bill Blair, the defense minister, and Jenny Carignan, the chief of the defense staff, are scheduled to be there for this announcement gives you a pretty good clue. This is going to have something to do with national security and defending the Arctic region. This has been an issue, particularly for our NATO partners. NATO really sees Canada's north as kind of the northern border of the NATO alliance, and it's one that Canada should be more active in keeping secure and patrolling. Of course, we've sort of shared those duties, at least in the air, with the United States through the NORAD pact, but there is real threats to Canada's northern sovereignty. Both Russia and China have an interest in the region and would very much like to get access to what is believed to be a lot of natural resources that are up there, buried under the ice and buried under the permafrost. We have, very scant military presence there. A lot of the patrolling is done by the Rangers, which is sort of a quasi-military unit up there. We have very antiquated military equipment, very old guns a lot of the Rangers are carrying. So I would expect this will be some kind of announcement of a new commitment for D&D forces and possibly equipment in patrolling the north, as well as possibly some progress on upgrading our radar systems in conjunction with the United States through NORAD. But yeah, so this is just kind of a stop off on his way back from London. He had been a very short trip to Paris first to meet French President Emmanuel Macron, and then yesterday in the UK to meet Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, as well as having an audience with King Charles. Of course, Carney and Charles apparently knew each other pretty well because in Carney's role as the governor of the Bank of England, they had probably attended some of the same cocktail parties. So it was more of a hey, how are you, instead of a first meeting. Of course, any of the details of that conversation are, by tradition, kept secret, but we were expecting Carney probably to raise the issue of Donald Trump's threats towards Canadian sovereignty. One thing that's interesting to note about this trip that really kind of stood out to me was the press conference that Carney held after he'd met with Keir Starmer. Journalists who were traveling with the Prime Minister on his plane had an opportunity to ask him questions at Canada House, which is the High Commission at Trafalgar Square. And Carney got some questions about his assets. And this has been something that Conservatives have been pushing for several weeks now, is disclosure of his personal stock holdings has to be done through the Federal Ethics Commissioner. Generally, it's something that happens about 120 days after a new prime minister takes office or an MP takes office, because they're also covered by this. They also have to make disclosure of their assets to avoid any conflicts of interest. In Carney's case, he is probably pretty wealthy. In fact, there was a Bloomberg story out today that estimated that he had stock options in Brookfield Asset Management. That was the company that he served as the chair until he launched his campaign. Options in excess of $6 or $7 million. So we think he's a pretty wealthy guy. But in this press conference, he was asked again about this blind trust that he has said he's moved all his assets into it. And the question is it truly a blind trust, or does he actually know what's gone into it, or was it liquidated? And he got really testy with some of the journalists. The two reporters in a row asked him questions about this. He did not seem to be comfortable answering the question, a little bit snappy, a little bit persnickety about it. This is something I think, Faiza, we're going to have to watch, when we expect to be into an election campaign very soon. Carney is going to have to find a way to handle these kind of questions that he doesn't like and do it with a little more of a happy warrior tone. This is something politicians face every time they take questions from reporters, is they get questions they don't want to answer. And if he starts looking grumpy or cranky about it, it's something that's going to stick to him really quickly. So I think it's going to be, that was kind of an interesting moment. We'd seen something similar to him at Rideau Hall on Friday after he had been sworn in as Prime Minister. A journalist asked him a question about his assets, whether it was truly a blind trust. And again, he was kind of seemed terse with that reporter. So this is a theme to watch. Can Mark Carney kind of put a gentler, kinder face on his campaign than he's shown us in the last couple of days, Faiza.
Answering questions is, after all, part of the job for the Prime Minister. Okay, Glenn McGregor in Ottawa, we thank you, and we'll check back with you later on. Thank you.
Thanks.